Good morning, you seeds of Onan. What a week in America. A complete narcissist and psycho with no decorum for the time-honored traditions of this country kept many Americans glued to their TV sets in disbelief. And at the end of the day, left many more Americans disturbed while the world watched on. I mean, who could forget this shocking moment?
Okay. Congratulations, you've just blown up the Bachelorette.
He says it with such decorum. It really hurt him that Claire walked out in the middle of the show and now has to be replaced. I mean, imagine if Mitch McConnell held the American Senate and as much esteem as Chris Harrison held a popular televised arranged marriage mating ritual. I mean, America might have as smooth a succession of power as the Bachelorette, but there's no way we're gonna let that happen. This is Doom Tonight, the second week of November. Welcome to hell.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime.
It's been an amazing week. We're getting so many bad karma points down here with the sowing distrust in elections and whatnot. I mean, if Republicans were actually worried about dead people voting, they shouldn't have let Trump kill so many people. I mean, what? They're back to 1,000 dead a day. Is that right, boys? There's a lot of Americans down here. There's so many Americans, there's been a 3,000% increase. A Frenchman say, why do you call it football if you don't play with your feet? And also a corresponding increase of Americans saying, because you can't say it in German, you surrender monkey. Which, fair enough, but that was your grandparents who won that war. I mean, how long are you gonna coast off that one championship? What are you, Bears fans? It's been such a fun week. Forget for a second about how all of a sudden Republicans hate elections, democracy, counting, and math. I mean, to its very core, America's electoral system was already fucked. I mean, Biden's gonna end up winning the popular vote by close to 5 million. That's more than the individual population of 27 states. I mean, what the fuck are we even talking about here? America still votes like it's 1797. But why? Because they didn't have the technology back then to do a national popular vote, so they came up with this dumbass electoral college shit instead. I mean, if you're a conservative in California or a liberal in Indiana, despite all the kumbaya bullshit, your vote rarely means anything on a national level, and that's because the whole system is already fucked. I mean, throwing a Trump like we did, shake things up, and shit is more fucked than a 20-year-old twink runaway at a Roger Stone pool boy sex party hosted by Jerry Falwell. I know, I was there. We don't do everything the way we used to. America used to update, change with the modern times. We didn't subsidize the horse and buggy industry to kill the rise of cars. For instance, there's a reason America doesn't watch baseball anymore, because it's boring. It's made for when they didn't have child labor laws and you spent your entire life in a factory. Of course you're going to want to sit there for 7 hours in the field watching dudes in pajamas play with balls. It's the only time in your life that life isn't trying to kill you. But now we have medicine and the internet and pornography and football. Nobody needs to watch baseball anymore. It's too slow and everybody has an Adderall addiction for a reason.
Subjects studied very, very carefully and very accurately.
It's no secret people from back in the day would love Trump. We actually have one right here, 1920s baseball player. What do you like about Trump?
Easy. His racial policies. I'm not even racist. I just don't want black people to play baseball.
Why?
Because it's the only way I'm going to get to play baseball. Don't get me started on the Dominicans.
So would you say America is great?
Sure. Polio's rampant, so no big science telling me what to do with their vaccines. The meat is rotten and has insects, so no big government with their regulations and fancy inspections. And the racism is great, so I still get to play baseball.
I mean, are you even good?
No, but I did lead the league in syphilis. My wife came in second.
They don't have any antibiotics. 1920s baseball player, everybody. 1920s baseball player.
I'm off to play baseball.
The Electoral College is baseball. We don't need it anymore. We have phones and children don't have to wipe the soot from their eyes when they come home from a hard shift at the horse glue factory. But yet, because it gives them power, Republicans still want to count votes the old way. I mean, 3/5 isn't just a fraction for these people. And we get them to talk about voter fraud. I mean, voting in suburbs is like having a Disney Fast Pass. You're in and you're out and you're on your way. If you're in downtown Atlanta, you gotta stand in line like it's 2001 and the Motorola Razor just dropped. You're gonna be there all day. And even after that, Republicans want to treat ballots in urban areas like Jedi younglings after Order 66 was given. Damn it, you were the chosen one, Annie! You think they just want to magically throw out votes in urban areas because they're urban and there's only fraud in urban areas? By the way, I hate the way people use the word urban. This isn't the Brian McKnight section at Sam Goody in the 90s. But hey, Maybe there's something there. What did Fox News see in voting irregularities that was so appalling, so controversial? Maybe Laura Ingraham actually uncovered something the American people need to know about it. What was it, Laura?
The Trump campaign has submitted explosive evidence of voter fraud to the DOJ in the form of a sworn affidavit from a poll worker in Clark County, Nevada. Now, that poll worker joins me now exclusively with the shocking details. Now, we're going to be concealing her identity, even disguising her voice over her own safety concerns. Thank you for joining us. You saw something suspicious. We're going to get right into it tonight. Happening on the side of a Biden-Harris van in the parking lot of the polling station. Now, walk the audience through what happened.
There was a van, and there was a black guy and a Mexican, and they voted. Is that good, Miss Ingraham? Is that what you want me to say? I'm done cleaning the house. You want me to sweep floors again? Please don't beat me like last time.
I mean, it's been exciting. I've been writing the same lies over and over again for years. I mean, I finally get to write new shit. Democrats are socialists. They want to tax you. You know, this type of shit. Usually we just take a piss by blocking minority voting rights or raiding the middle class, but directly attacking democracy and basic math, it's been so long.
Now, tonight, millions of Americans, you do feel betrayed. According to Politico, look at this. 70% of Republicans, they don't believe this election was free, fair, and for good reason.
Did you know Hannity's hair is actually bulletproof? Oh yeah, we did experiments. Demon semen is a very forceful ejaculate. It can leap tall buildings in a single bound. It's faster than a speeding bullet. Basically, it's like Superman in the 50s. Is that a bird? Is that a plane? No, it's demon splooge. Why do you think it has so many medicinal properties? A bunch of us demons used to play Splooter off of Hannity's hairpiece. Yeah, Splooter. It's a fun game. You know, the old burping the worm, shooting a load, the wang spatoon, the crab mangoo, you know, the get off, the crack nuts, the gentleman's relish, the how do you do whack-a-mole bad monkey, right off of Hannity's hairpiece. And lo and behold, that motherfucker's head is pomaded so tight that it's actually bulletproof. We have a live shot of it right here.
Pew, pew, pew. Pew, pew, pew.
It was a week where half the country rebelled against math. I mean, no wonder the GOP has so many problems with Asian voters. No, seriously, lost them 3-1. As a former Indian, let me just say I was not one of those. Yeah, to me, the most evil thing to come out of the Middle East wasn't Al-Qaeda, it was Al-Jabra. I mean, it's a sentiment shared by most Americans. Here's how scared Americans are of both math and different cultures. 56% of Americans think we shouldn't teach Arabic numbers in schools, as in 1, 2, 3. Yeah, those are Arabic numbers invented by Arabs. The Middle East was actually where a lot of science and math was invented and discovered. The fact that it's called Al-Jabra and the numbers we use are called Arabic numbers should make that apparent. 700 years before Galileo, a Persian scientist calculated the Earth was a sphere and even accurately calculated latitudes and longitudes. I mean, as recently as the 1970s, women in Afghanistan wore miniskirts and went to the movies by themselves. And in Egypt, the idea of forcing women to wear hijab was mocked openly.
أول حاجة قال لي يجب أن تقيم الحجاب في مصر وتخلي كل واحدة تمشي في الشارع تلبس طرحة. كل واحدة تمشي.
As recent as the 60s and 70s. I mean, what changed? It's almost like world events matter. And when in 1953, Western powers, in conjunction with oil companies, overthrew what was a secular democracy in Iran, because that secular democracy in Iran nationalized Iranian oil fields, seizing them from Western power and companies like BP. And those Western powers then replaced that secular Iranian democracy, a dream in the West now, with the Shah, a greedy monarch who gave the West Iran's oil again before his regime crumbled and allowed crazy religious despots like this guy to create a crippling and regressive theocracy in a massive event of historical significance called the Iranian Revolution that then dictated the promulgation of regressive religious ideology that spread over the entire region. And it was all started by the fact that the West couldn't leave a democracy in the Middle East alone because they wanted its oil. I mean, that's voter fraud. Either that or, yeah, okay, the Middle East has always been a desert of sand and will always be that way. It's almost like history is complex, and people's views of the Middle East are rooted in their own historical ignorance, just the way I like it. But forget understanding. That's not what we do. We'll just continue to promote fear, division, and ignorance to a point where people are racist against numbers. I remember that day. That was fun. Like, fuck you, Mr. Hicks' 6th grade math class. I mean, all ignorance is interrelated. It just exists on a proportional scale in which these societies are operating. And I mean, this goes globally. Remember Boko Haram kidnapped those girls because they were learning? Their name literally means books are bad in Arabic. Boko, books, Haram, bad. I mean, why would Boko Haram want people poorly educated? Why would anybody?
We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
It's the same reason Trump does. Trump is Boko Haram. It's because lack of education makes people easier to control and more liable to believe your lies. Let's take the vote count situation. I mean, Trump was ahead 600,000 at one point in Pennsylvania. Seems odd that Democrats could just magically come from behind like that. That's because Trump created conditions for those votes to be counted like that so he could complain about the very conditions he created. And I quote, "The GOP-controlled legislature in those 3 key states all declined to let mail ballots be counted early, unlike the vast majority of states, despite knowing the number of mail ballots would dwarf any previous election." In Pennsylvania, the Republican-controlled legislature refused to change state law to allow county election officials to start processing mail-in ballots until 7 a.m. on election day. In Wisconsin, it was the same. Michigan, too, faced similar GOP-incited roadblocks. Other states were allowed to start counting ballots received before election day. The question is, why would the GOP and Trump want mail-in votes counted later? I mean, why?
Trump's strategy tonight, we know he's someone who thinks very much in the moment, not a lot of scripting, not a lot of rehearsing. What is he going to do tonight? Is he likely to sort of jump out in a couple of hours' time and say, look, I've got it, and leave it to the courts?
Yeah, we've all heard those reports, and I think at the moment they'll be watching very closely.
President Trump, I'm reading from the Axios piece now, has told confidants he'll declare victory on Tuesday night if it looks like he's ahead. That's according to 3 sources familiar with his private comments. That's even if the Electoral College outcome still hinges on large numbers of uncounted votes in key states like Pennsylvania.
Now, I don't know if that's going to be changed because we're going to go in the night of, as soon as that election's over, we're going in with our lawyers. But we don't want to have Pennsylvania where you have a political governor, a very partisan guy, and we don't want to have other states like Nevada where you have the head of the Democratic clubhouse as your governor. We don't want to be in a position where he's allowed to every day watch ballots come in. Gee, if we could only find 10,000 more ballots.
One final thing, George, if you speak with many smart Democrats, they believe that President Trump will be ahead on election night, probably getting 280 electorals, somewhere in that range. And then they're going to try to steal it back after the election. We believe that we will be over 290 electoral votes on election night. So no matter what they try to do, what kind of hijinks or lawsuits or whatever kind of nonsense they try to pull off, we're still going to have enough electoral votes to get President Trump reelected.
That was the plan all along. He was clear about it. He said over and over again. I mean, this is during the first debate.
I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that
from
mean,
a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're
And what
sending
are you
out
gonna do?
80 million
And what would you
ballots.
do about that?
They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it, number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
And aided by delayed count of absentee ballots due to laws Republican state legislatures passed at Donald Trump's behest. That's exactly what happened. Trump's votes were counted first, seemingly putting him ahead and allowing him to make a claim at the election because of supposedly fraudulent conditions that he and the GOP created to say there are fraudulent conditions. And lo and behold, on election night, despite multiple levels of bipartisan oversight and literal cameras in ballot counting rooms, that is exactly what happened.
We're getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election.
He spelled out exactly how he was going to be a lying, manipulative piece of shit, and then he did it. Like the shittiest kind of Bond villain ever. And we've so steeped the American culture in a massive lying and panic that the two narratives, right-wing and real, are so divergent from each other that many voters don't know who to believe. Remember when we highlighted how disinformation in healthcare led to so much confusion? People actually believe the Republican lie on death panels.
And former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin jumped into the fray with a Facebook posting claiming her young son, who suffers from Down syndrome, would be subjected to death panels under the proposed health reforms. With his poll numbers on healthcare slipping, President Barack Obama is taking on the myths himself.
Every credible person who has looked into it has said, there are no so-called death panels, an offensive notion to me and to the American people. These are phony claims meant to divide us.
The real effect may simply be leaving the people who would be most affected the most confused.
One person says one thing and the other one says another one, and you don't know which one is really telling the truth.
I mean, the media is completely incapable of calling out an obvious truth over lies. Whether consciously or subconsciously, this attempt to both sides every issue in a false attempt at objectivity instead creates an equivalence between people who say truthful and untruthful things, like those who say count every vote, there's no obvious fraud, and the people in a democracy trying to throw out hundreds of thousands of votes, who also, instead of booking the Four Seasons, booked the Four Seasons landscaping parking lot next to the dildo factory.
Either way, at 11:24 on Saturday morning, America reached a historic moment. CNN announced Joe Biden as the president-elect, Donald Trump played golf, and his campaign was in a car park by Fantasy Island.
I mean, you would think the era of Trump would put an end to both sides, but instead it's only served to normalize Trump's agenda with the American people. Both sides isn't what objective journalism is supposed to be. Morality isn't always 50-50. I mean, how would Fox News or the American media cover the Trail of Tears, the forced relocation of some 60,000 Native Americans from their ancestral homelands to reservations? Luckily, we have 1830's 24-hour cable news reporter right here. 1830's reporter, where are you?
I'm reporting live from the Trail of Tears, Sean.
Your makeup is terrible. You look a lot like 1920s baseball player.
That's because certain shit productions don't have a makeup budget.
That's true. Also, it's close to home. So what's going on there, 1830s reporter? Is it as bad as people say?
Look, some would say the Trail of Tears is one of the worst acts in American history. A shameful robbery, really, of land that has belonged to people for generations, that has provided food, home, and a life. And in place of that, they were given cold, wind, starvation, hunger, and death. And others would say, that's how you make space for an Arby's. Either way, both sides are going to have to work this one out, Sean. Frankly, the Indians are just being stubborn and refusing to die.
So you're saying both sides are responsible for this?
Absolutely. White people need land for an American concept of the German word Lebensraum, or as it's pronounced in the vernacular, manifest destiny. It's where you displace people for greed, even to murderous ends, and Native Americans are refusing to bargain because they want to exist. Both sides really are acting like children. Sean?
It doesn't seem like they're the same at all. It seems like to judge them as equal merit spits in the face of objectivity at all.
Yes, but that would not only require bravery to form my own opinion, but the work ethic also. So, both sides instead. Besides, I got a date with an intern later, so yeah, totally, both sides.
I mean, how would you even both sides, like something like slavery? How would news networks even cover that? What would that look like?
No, I don't think I'm gonna do this one.
1830s reporter, everybody. 1830s reporter, and I think 1920s baseball player also. That dull and passive objectivity where you judge both sides as equal merit is never what objectivity in journalism was supposed to be. It's not where objectivity in journalism even comes from. That story is much more American. Objective journalism didn't start as some rule. It came about because in the 1920s, journalism was so partisan and so broken and sensational that papers started selling themselves as objective to differentiate from what became known as yellow journalism. Papers that marketed themselves as objective started to sell better than the yellow journalism of the day. Yeah, yellow journalism. No, that's not what Tucker Carlson calls Asian journalists in his free time, but it might be. Yellow journalism is tabloid or sensational journalism taken to the max. Something Fox has combined with political coverage and presented as real, which presents Fox with a problem. Once their baby boomer demographic kicks it, who will be left to watch Fox and the viewpoint they represent? Without eyeballs, there's no advertising dollars. And without advertising dollars, baby, there's no Fox News. And that's what killed yellow journalism in the first place. People were so sick of the lies and the partisanship, they started to buy papers that followed strict standards of objectivity. But that's what objectivity was, a blatant attempt to cut through blatant lies to arrive at a place of truth, okay? Objective journalism wasn't meant to launder lies and make those lies look as plausible as fact. It was meant to do the opposite. When you see media channels you hate or even like and trust do this, they're spitting in the face of what objective journalism was supposed to be all about. Much like the yellow journalism of the past, Fox's biggest enemy may be the very engine that created it. That's right, free market economics and people's ability to make their own choices. That is, if there are true objective sources who render yellow journalism as obsolete. I mean, no reasonable younger person is going to watch Fox or vote for the Republicans in the future, right? Right? That is until hell gets started on them. Hell, we got the hippies to vote for Reagan, baby. Thanks for watching and make sure you vote in last week's elections. Don't floss and we'll see you next week.